Hello everybody, welcome into another lesson. So today we are going to talk about similar figures. These arcs inside of these triangles, those are called congruency markers. So, for example, the bottom left angle of the big triangle is congruent to the bottom left angle of the smaller triangle. The top angle of the big triangle is congruent to the top angle of the smaller triangle, and the bottom right angle of the big triangle is congruent to the bottom right angle of the smaller triangle. Well, when you have similar figures, their angles are always congruent. That'll always be. What's not congruent, though, are the sides. The sides may not be congruent, but their sides are in direct proportion to each other. And you can use a proportion to set up and find the missing side. So, for example, we have the ratio 10 to 5 from the big triangle. We have 10 on the big triangle to 5 on the smaller triangle, because these are corresponding sides. The corresponding sides of each triangle are in direct proportion. You'll set that equal to that x on the big triangle corresponds to the 4 on the smaller triangle. Alright, so now we have a proportion. We just got to solve a proportion. So we would say that 5 times x, which is 5x, is equal to 10 times 4, which is 40. Alright, well, we have 5x. We need to solve for just x. We'll divide both sides by 5. Left side, 5's cancel out. So you would have x is equal to 40 divided by 5, which is 8. So x is 8 inches. So on the big triangle, that x, that missing length, that's equal to 8 inches. That's what you would get. So again, similar figures, you can just set up a proportion to solve for them. Just solve for the missing sides. I got a couple more examples here. I don't think we need to make this a super long lesson, but it is important to teach about similar figures. Alright, what do we got here? Alright, let me just set up all the angles here. Alright, let's get some lengths. That's going to be equal to .25 kilometers. We got 10 kilometers. 4 kilometers, and we have 6 kilometers. Okay. Alright. So we have here what's called two quadrilaterals. Quadrilateral just means it's four-sided figure. That's all a quadrilateral is. They're a four-sided figure. So we have our congruent angles, except for these figures are inverted. They're flipped around, which sometimes you will see that. So you just follow the congruency markers for which angles are congruent, and you'll be able to figure out which sides are congruent. So For example, I think it's a dead giveaway. The 10 kilometers is similar to the 4 kilometers. It's in proportion to the 4 kilometers. So let's start there. The 10 on the big quadrilateral has a ratio to the 4 kilometers on the smaller quadrilateral. Now we need to figure out the x and 6, I would say. It looks to be that based on the congruency markers here, because you have the top left angle of this quadrilateral is congruent to the top right angle of this quadrilateral. That means that x on the big quadrilateral has a ratio with the 6 kilometers on the big quadrilateral, on the smaller quadrilateral. So we use the 10 to 4 to help set up our proportion. We also could have used the 25 to 10. If you have more than one pair of similar sides on each figure, you can take your pick of which one you want to use to set up your proportion. I just thought 10 and 4 would be nicer to work with than 25 and 10. That's much easier to work with. So now we just need to do our proportion. 4 times x, well, that'd be 4x, would be equal to 10 times 6, which is 60. Alright, well, we need to solve for just x. Divide both sides by 4. So on the left side, the 4's will cancel out. You'll just get x is equal to 60 divided by 4, which is 15. And the units are kilometers. So for the missing side x on the big quadrilateral, x is equal to 15 kilometers. That's what you would get. It's equal to 15. So again, whenever you have inverted figures, just follow your congruency markers. So kind of use them as a guide for which side is which. With one arc and the right angle corresponds to the one arc and the right angle on this, that tells you that the left side of the figure corresponds to the right side of the smaller figure. So that's how you follow and figure out which side is which. And I got another example at least. All right, what do we got here? All right. Whoops, that one's inverted. This one is inverted. Okay, let me draw my congruencies here. That's a right angle. Alright, now all I need to do is label the sides, which one's which. This is 20 feet. That's 8 feet. This is 12 feet. Alright, so this is 15 feet. 6 feet, and x feet. Alright, so we have two more similar quadrilaterals here. They're similar, but they're not congruent. The angles are all congruent. We can see based on the arc markings here which angles are congruent. So again, we have a missing side x that we need to solve for. I think it's clear that based on where the congruency markings are, the 1 and 2 arcs, the congruency markings at the 12 corresponds to the x. So you'll set up your ratio 12 over x. You'll set that equal to, now take your pick of sides. You could take your pick of sides. Well, it looks to be that you would think 20 corresponds to 15, but it does not. I'll tell you why. Because on this big quadrilateral, you have the arc markings 1 and 3. You have 1 arc marking, 3 arc markings. But on the smaller one, you have 2 arc markings and then a right angle. That tells you these two sides of the quadrilateral are not in proportion. The 20 feet would actually correspond to this side of the quadrilateral, and there's no measurement for that. So unless we want to solve for another missing measure, let's not use the 20 or the 15. That leaves only the 8 feet and the 6 feet. Based on the congruency markings here, that 8 would correspond to 6. Alright, so you have your proportion set up. 12 corresponds to the x. You set that equal to the 8 corresponds to the 6. Alright, well, let's go ahead. Let's do our proportion. X times 8 is, well, 8x. Set that equal to 12 times 6. Well, that's 72. Alright, we have 8x. We want to just solve for x, so divide both sides by 8. Left side, the 8's cancel out. So you'll get x is equal to 72 divided by 8. Well, that's 9. And the unit's feet, so the answer is that x is equal to 9 feet. That's exactly what you get. X is equal to 9 feet. Let's see here. I think we do one more example. I think we'll do one more. Then I'll drop you off after one more example. That'll be it for the day. All right. Actually, let's draw the triangle how they have it. There we go. Alright, this is 9 inches. 9 inches. This one has 3 congruency markings. This is x inches. We don't know this side. This will have 2 congruency markings. Okay. This is equal to 9 inches. This one has 2 congruency markings. This one has 1. This is 6 inches. Which means this one should have 3. Okay. 3 congruency markings here. Alright. So we have our, in this case, similar triangles. So again, all the angles are congruent between the two. these are basically inverted from each other, flipped upside down from each other. So we got to figure out how we're going to set up our proportion. Well, it looks to be that the x inches, because you have the 1 arc and the 2 arc for the congruency markers. If we go here, or on this triangle, on the smaller one, you'll see we have the 1 arc and 2 arc, so that tells you the x inches corresponds to the 9 inches. So x corresponds to 9. Now, we need to set up our proportion. We need to figure out the other sides. Well, the 1 and 3 arc for the congruency markers on the big triangle, the 9 inches corresponds to the 6 inches on the smaller triangle, because on the smaller one you have the 1 and 3 arc congruency markers. So just go ahead and set up your proportion. So x corresponds to 9 inches, where the 9 inches corresponds to 6 inches. Once you figure that out, we can do our proportion. So x times 6, well, that'd just be 6x, would be equal to, what's 9 times 9? That's 81. Alright, well, we have 6x. We want to solve for just x. Divide both sides by 6. Alright, well, on the left side, the 6's cancel. You just have x equals 81 over 6, which I think we're going to, what we're going to do is we're going to get the calculator, since 81 and 6 is not going to 81 evenly, we're going to round to, well, it looks like it comes out to 13.5. 81 divided by 6 is 13.5 inches. And don't be surprised if sometimes you get decimal answers. So x would be 13.5 inches according to this. So when you're dealing with similar figures, all the angles between the two will always be congruent, but you need to follow your congruency markers. They're kind of like a map for you to figure out which side corresponds to which. Okay? So for example, you got the side between the 1 congruency marker and the 3 congruency marker corresponds to the 1 and 3 congruency marker on this one. Okay? So you just follow your congruency markers. You'll be able to set up your ratio from one figure to another, and then you'll have a nice proportion. Then you just solve your proportion. So I'm just trying to get you used to what you're going to see in geometry. You're going to see a lot of inverted figures and have to be able to figure out which side relates to which on which of the figures. So next lesson, we're going to talk about line and angle relationships. So we're going to learn some very interesting things about lines and angles in the next lesson. Hope everyone has a good day. Take care.